The grand chamber of the Galactic Council sparkled under the light of 3 artificial suns. Delegates from over 1,000 worlds filled the circular room, their forms ranging from crystalline structures to gaseous clouds contained in environmental suits. Today marked the millennial review of potential member species, an event that occurred once every 1,000 years. Council leader Anderson, a tall being with silvery skin, called the chamber to order. His voice, translated through universal communicators, echoed through the vast space. We gather today to evaluate new species for potential membership in our ancient alliance. First on our agenda, Earth. A holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber, showing the blue-green planet spinning slowly. Several delegates leaned forward, while others shifted in their seats with obvious disinterest. Earth, began the presenting officer, a planet inhabited by a species known as humans. They have achieved spaceflight and established colonies on their moon and neighboring planet Mars. Their technological level is... He paused, checking his data pad. Approximately grade 3 on the universal scale. A wave of murmurs swept through the chamber. Grade 3 was considered barely above primitive by council standards. Most species achieve membership at grade 7 or higher. They still used fossil fuels. Asked one delegate, their tentacles waving in apparent amusement. How quaint. And their space vessels, another delegate chimed in. They're powered by chemical rockets. I haven't seen those since my species was in its infancy. The murmurs grew into chuckles, and the chuckles transformed into outright laughter. The chamber filled with the sounds of various species expressing their amusement in different ways, some through traditional laughter, others through color changes or electromagnetic pulses. They wage war among themselves, noted a crystalline being, its facets glinting. Their history is drenched in conflict. They cannot even unite their own planet. The laughter grew louder. They applied for membership. A gaseous entity pulsed with mirth. The audacity. They barely understand basic gravitational manipulation. Council leader Anderson raised his hand for silence, though his lips twitched with barely concealed amusement. We must maintain decorum, he said, but his tone carried a note of entertainment. Are there any delegates who wish to speak regarding Earth's application? The chamber fell into amused silence, delegates still shaking with suppressed laughter. Then, from the highest tier of seats, a figure stood. Representative James, one of the oldest members of the council, rose slowly to his feet. His species was among the first to achieve interstellar travel, and their longevity was legendary. His ancient eyes, set in a face that seemed carved from weathered wood, surveyed the chamber with quiet intensity. I wish to speak, he said, his voice carrying naturally without the need for amplification. The chamber grew quiet, all traces of laughter fading. When James spoke, even the most powerful delegates listened. You all laugh, he continued, his words measured and careful. You mock their primitive technology, their conflicts, their struggling attempts to reach the stars. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the assembly. But I have watched Earth for centuries, and I see something none of you have noticed. A delegate from the lower tier called out, what could we possibly have missed about such a primitive species? James' expression remained grave. Everything that matters, he replied. And your laughter may well be the greatest mistake this council has made in 10,000 years. The chamber fell into absolute silence. Even council leader Anderson straightened in his seat, the amusement gone from his face. When James spoke with such certainty, history had proven him right too many times to ignore. With the council's permission, James said, I would like to present my observations of Earth and its inhabitants. What I have to share may change everything you think you know about humanity. Anderson nodded slowly. Proceed, Representative James. The council will hear your testimony. The ancient delegate moved toward the central platform, each step deliberate and purposeful. As he walked, the holographic display of Earth continued to rotate silently behind him. Its blue oceans and white clouds spinning in an eternal dance, unaware that its fate was being decided in this distant chamber of the stars. Representative James stood at the center of the council chamber, his aged form illuminated by the soft glow of the holographic Earth rotating behind him. His eyes, deep with the wisdom of centuries, locked onto the assembled delegates. "I first encountered Earth 400 years ago," he began, his voice carrying a weight that silenced even the most restless delegates. "I was a young observer then, assigned to monitor what we considered an unremarkable world in an unremarkable system." With a gesture, he changed the holographic display. Images of Earth's past flickered to life. Sailing ships crossing vast oceans, steam engines puffing across continents, early automobiles puttering down dirt roads. "I watched them when they thought the world was flat," he continued. "I observed as they proved themselves wrong, not through divine intervention or alien assistance, but through their own curiosity and determination." A delegate from the lower tier snorted. "Many species go through these phases. What makes humans special?" James smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. "Time," he said simply. "Look at this." He manipulated the display again, showing a timeline of technological advancement for various species. Most civilizations in this room took between 2,000 to 3,000 years to progress from basic tools to spaceflight. The timeline shifted, focusing on Earth. Humans did it in less than 400 years. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the chamber. A crystalline being chimed in protest. "That's impossible. No species develops that quickly." "I watched it happen," James countered. "From their first powered flight to landing on their moon. 66 years. From discovering electricity to creating artificial intelligence. Less than 2 centuries." He paused, letting the implications sink in. They achieve in decades what took us centuries. The holographic display showed scenes of human innovation. The Wright brothers' first flight, the moon landing, the Mars colonies, the first quantum computer. Each image flickered past faster than the last, a dizzying display of progress. "But their methods are crude," protested Council Leader Anderson. "Their technology is primitive compared to ours." "Is it?" James asked quietly. He zoomed in on a human laboratory. "They don't have gravity manipulation technology like ours because they found different solutions. They don't use crystal matrices for computing because they developed silicon chips instead. Their methods aren't primitive. They're original." The chamber grew uncomfortably quiet as James continued. "I've seen them face extinction-level events, plagues, wars, climate disasters. Each time, they not only survived but emerged stronger. They don't just adapt. They thrive on challenges." He showed footage of humans working in extreme environments. Deep-sea researchers braving crushing pressures, scientists in Antarctica enduring brutal cold, astronauts floating in the vacuum of space. While we perfect our existing technology, they constantly experiment with new approaches. While we rely on proven methods, they take risks. While we seek stability, they embrace chaos as a catalyst for growth. A gaseous entity pulsed with skepticism. "You sound like you admire them." "I fear them," James corrected, causing several delegates to shift uneasily in their seats, not for what they are now, but for what they're becoming. "In the time it took me to prepare this presentation, they developed 3 new methods of quantum entanglement communication." He turned to face the council leader directly. "I've observed thousands of species across my lifetime. None of them, not one, has shown this rate of advancement. None has demonstrated this level of adaptability." The holographic display showed Earth again, but now it highlighted the planet's rapid changes. Cities growing like living things, satellites multiplying in orbit, the green spread of terraforming on Mars. "You laugh at their primitive technology," James said, his voice growing stern. "But has anyone here asked why they're applying for membership now, when they're clearly aware of how far behind they appear to be?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Several delegates exchanged worried glances. "Because," James continued, "in all my centuries of observation, I've learned one crucial truth about humans." He paused, making sure he had everyone's attention. They never show all their cards at once. The chamber erupted in confused whispers as delegates tried to understand the unfamiliar phrase, while James stood silently, waiting to reveal even more disturbing truths about the species that everyone had been so quick to dismiss. James raised his hand, and the holographic display shifted again. This time, it showed multiple screens, each displaying different aspects of human achievement. The council chamber grew quiet as delegates leaned forward, their earlier mockery forgotten. "Let me show you what humans do when faced with impossible situations," James said. He gestured to the first screen. "This is what happened when we secretly introduced a mathematical problem that our best minds needed 50 years to solve." The screen showed a human university. A young professor stood at a board covered in complex equations. "They solved it in 3 months," James stated, "not because one human was smarter than us, but because they approached it differently. They posted the problem online, and thousands of humans worked on it simultaneously, sharing their failures and building on each other's successes." Murmurs of disbelief filled the chamber. A delegate made of pure energy pulsed skeptically. "That must be an isolated incident." "No," James replied firmly. He changed the display. When their doctors faced an untreatable disease, they didn't follow standard research protocols. Instead, they created a game, a puzzle that millions of humans played for fun. The players, without realizing it, were modeling protein folding patterns. They found the cure in weeks. The crystalline delegate chimed in confusion. "They turned life-saving research into entertainment." "Exactly," James nodded. "And that's what makes them dangerous. They don't recognize traditional limitations. When they can't solve a problem one way, they completely change their approach." He showed more evidence. Humans creating artificial gravity through rotation when they couldn't generate gravitational fields, developing mechanical solutions when they lacked biological ones, using simple tools in innovative ways to achieve complex results. "But here's what truly sets them apart," James continued, bringing up a new display. "This is their response to failure." The screen showed various human disasters: failed rocket launches, collapsed buildings, crashed aircraft. But each failure was followed by immediate analysis, redesign, and new attempts. "Most species retreat after failure," James explained. "They become more cautious, more conservative. Humans do the opposite. They become more determined. They see failure not as a setback, but as data." A delegate with multiple eyes blinked in sequence. "Surely they have limits, physical constraints they cannot overcome." James's expression grew grave. "Watch this." He showed footage of human athletes. "These humans are breaking their own physical limitations through sheer determination. They're achieving what their own scientists once thought impossible. They call it pushing the envelope, deliberately going beyond known limits to find new ones." The chamber watched in silence as the evidence mounted. Humans surviving in environments that should have killed them. Humans building machines that shouldn't have worked. Humans solving problems through methods that seemed absurd until they succeeded. "But the most compelling evidence is this," James said, bringing up one final display. It showed human children playing with complex puzzles and games. "They train their young to think creatively from the start. While our children learn established solutions, human children are encouraged to find new ones. They don't just accept problems, they enjoy them." Council leader Anderson stood up. "Are you suggesting that this species, which we were about to dismiss, is actually—" "I'm not suggesting anything," James interrupted. "I'm showing you facts. Humans don't just advance, they accelerate. Each generation builds on the last, but not in a linear way. Their progress is exponential." He turned off the holographic display, leaving the chamber in dim light. "And now they're asking to join the council. Ask yourselves, would a primitive species that we've been mocking know about this meeting? About our technology levels? About our standard membership requirements?" The silence in the chamber grew heavier as the implications sank in. "They're not showing us their best technology," James concluded. They're showing us exactly what they want us to see. And we, in our arrogance, fail to ask the most important question. Why? Several delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The earlier laughter was now completely forgotten, replaced by a growing sense of unease. Something about Earth's application suddenly felt less like a joke and more like a well-planned move in a game whose rules they didn't fully understand. James stood quietly, waiting for the council to process what they'd learned, knowing he had even more disturbing revelations to share. The council chamber remained silent as James moved to display his next set of evidence. The artificial suns had dimmed, creating an atmosphere of growing tension among the delegates. "Now," James said, his voice carrying a note of warning, "let me show you what happens when humans face opposition." He activated a new holographic sequence. This is how they respond to pressure. The display showed scenes from human history, cities rebuilding after natural disasters, nations uniting against common threats, innovative solutions emerging from resource shortages. During their second global war, James explained, one nation threatened them with advanced rockets. Within months, humans not only learned to counter these weapons but improved upon their design. Their response to being attacked wasn't fear, it was innovation. A delegate made of swirling gases interrupted. But surely their divisions make them weak. They fight among themselves constantly. James smiled grimly. That's what makes them more dangerous. Watch this. He showed footage of two nations in conflict, then the same nations working together years later. They can turn from enemies to allies faster than any species we've encountered. Their conflicts don't weaken them, they drive them to improve. The display shifted to show various human space programs. When two of their nations competed to reach their moon, they accomplished in a decade what should have taken a century. Competition drives them to exceed their limitations. Council leader Anderson leaned forward. You're suggesting that rejecting their application would be catastrophic, James finished. Let me show you why. He brought up a new simulation. This is how other species typically react to council rejection. They withdraw, focus inward, try again in a few centuries. The display changed, but based on my observations, this is how humans would likely respond. The simulation showed Earth's nations uniting, redirecting all resources toward space development, accelerating their technology at an unprecedented rate. They have a phrase, James continued, nothing unites us like a common enemy. If we reject them, we risk becoming that enemy. A crystalline being chimed in disagreement. Surely you exaggerate. What could they do against the combined might of the council? James's expression darkened. They have another saying. Necessity is the mother of invention. When humans need something badly enough, they find a way to achieve it. Always. He paused for effect. And right now, they want council membership. Ask yourselves, what if we take that away? The display showed more examples. Humans creating alternative technologies when denied access to resources, developing new energy sources when old ones were depleted, finding ways around obstacles that seemed insurmountable. But here's what truly worries me, James said, his voice growing quieter. Humans learn from their opponents. They absorb and improve upon any technology they encounter. If we reveal our full capabilities while denying them membership, he let the thought hang in the air. The chamber erupted in worried whispers. A delegate with multiple arms raised all of them for attention. Are you suggesting they would steal our technology? No, James replied. I'm suggesting they would understand it, improve it, and develop countermeasures to it. Not out of malice, but because that's what they do. It's their natural response to any challenge. He showed one final simulation. This is a conservative estimate of human technological progress over the next century if we reject them. The display showed advancement rates that made several delegates gasp. They achieve in decades what took us millennia. And that's without the motivation of proving us wrong. Council leader Anderson stood, his silvery skin reflecting the holographic light. You paint a disturbing picture, Representative James. Are you suggesting we should accept them out of fear? I'm suggesting, James replied carefully, that we should accept them because they've already proven themselves worthy. We were just too blind to see it. Their application isn't a request for help. It's an offer of alliance. The chamber fell silent again as the implications sank in. The humans weren't begging for admission. They were extending an opportunity for cooperation. And based on James's evidence, refusing that opportunity could have consequences none of them had imagined. The question isn't whether they're ready to join us, James concluded. The question is whether we're ready for what happens if we refuse them. The artificial suns brightened slightly, but the shadow of uncertainty remained over the assembled delegates. James paused, looking around the chamber at the worried faces of the delegates. He took a deep breath before delivering his most shocking revelation. "What I'm about to show you was discovered just 3 days ago," he said, his hands trembling slightly as he activated a new holographic display. "This is why I requested to speak today." The display showed a massive structure hidden in Earth's asteroid belt. As the image zoomed in, delegates could see it was clearly artificial. A huge ring-shaped device with energy patterns unlike anything they'd seen before. "This," James said quietly, "is a working faster-than-light drive. Built entirely by humans, using principles we've never considered." The chamber erupted in chaos. Council leader Anderson had to strike his ceremonial staff 3 times to restore order. "Impossible," he declared. "No species has ever developed FTL travel independently. All of us received the basic principles from the founders." "Exactly," James replied. "Which is why this is so significant. They approached the problem without our preconceptions, without our established rules. They found a completely different solution." He showed detailed scans of the device. "They're not manipulating space-time the way we do. He struggled for words, "they're folding it. Like paper. The energy requirements are a fraction of what our methods need." A technical expert among the delegates floated forward, their luminescent form pulsing with agitation. "But the mathematical principles, the technological requirements. They solved it with what they call quantum origami," James explained. "It's so elegant that our best scientists are still trying to understand how it works. And this is just one of their hidden advances." The display shifted to show other secret human facilities. Antimatter production plants disguised as regular factories, gravity manipulation experiments concealed underground, consciousness transfer technology masked as medical research. "They've been advancing far faster than we realized," James continued. "Remember those primitive chemical rockets we were laughing at? That's just what they're willing to show us. They're already far beyond that level." Council leader Anderson's silver skin had paled to almost white. "Why would they hide their true capabilities?" "Because they're careful," James replied. "They've been watching us as much as we've been watching them. They studied our patterns, our politics, our prejudices. They knew that coming to us with advanced technology would be seen as a threat, while appearing primitive would make us underestimate them." He showed more evidence. Hidden human achievements, carefully concealed breakthroughs, technologies that rivaled or surpassed the Council's best work. "Their application for membership isn't coming from a position of weakness," James explained. "It's a carefully calculated move. They're ready to join us as equals, but they're presenting themselves as students to avoid appearing threatening." A crystalline delegate chimed in distress. "But why apply now? Why not wait until they're even stronger?" James nodded, as if expecting this question. "Because they understand something we've forgotten. The value of cooperation. They could continue developing independently, but they recognize that working together benefits everyone. They're offering us their unique perspectives, their innovative approaches, their ability to find solutions we'd never consider." The display showed human scientific teams working together, solving problems through collaboration, sharing ideas across borders and cultures. "Their strength isn't just their technology," James continued. "It's their ability to adapt, to think differently, to see possibilities where we see only obstacles. They're not applying to learn from us. They're offering to help us grow." The chamber had fallen completely silent. The earlier mockery felt like a distant memory, replaced by a dawning realization of how badly they had misjudged the situation. "We stand at a crossroads," James concluded. "We can welcome them as equals, benefit from their unique perspectives, and grow stronger together. Or we can reject them, push them away, and watch them surpass us within a generation." He turned off the display, leaving the chamber in contemplative darkness. "The truth is," he said softly, "they don't need our approval. They're offering us a chance to be partners rather than competitors. And given what I've shown you about how they respond to challenges, we should consider their offer very carefully." The artificial suns began to brighten again, but the council chamber remained unusually quiet as delegates grappled with the implications of everything they had learned. Council leader Anderson called for an emergency session immediately after James's revelations. The chamber, usually orderly and formal, buzzed with urgent conversations as delegates formed small groups, discussing the shocking information they'd received. "Order." Anderson's voice cut through the chaos. "We must make a decision about Earth's application now. The situation is more complex than we initially assumed." A delegate made of pure energy pulsed forward. "We should accept them immediately. Their faster-than-light technology alone makes them valuable allies." "No," the crystalline being chimed in alarm. "That's exactly why we should reject them. They're too advanced, too unpredictable. They could destabilize the entire council." James stood quietly at his position, watching the debate unfold. The artificial suns cast long shadows across the chamber as delegates argued back and forth. "Think about the possibilities," a biological delegate suggested. "Their problem-solving abilities could help us overcome challenges we've struggled with for centuries." Another delegate floated nervously above their seat. "Or they could solve those problems in ways we can't control. Their methods are completely foreign to our understanding." Anderson raised his hand for silence. "We need to vote. The options are immediate acceptance, immediate rejection, or," he paused, "provisional membership with conditions." The chamber erupted again. A senior delegate with scales that shifted colors with emotion turned deep purple. "Conditions. They've hidden their true capabilities from us. How can we trust them to follow any conditions we set?" "Perhaps," James finally spoke, "we should consider why they chose to reveal their capabilities through me, rather than displaying them openly." The chamber fell silent, waiting for his explanation. "They knew we would react with fear," he continued. "They chose to show us through someone we trust, someone who could help us understand their perspective. Even now, they're demonstrating wisdom and diplomatic skill." Council leader Anderson nodded slowly. "A fair point. They could have revealed their advanced technology in a show of force. Instead, they chose a path of peaceful disclosure." A delegation of gaseous beings swirled in agitation. "But what if this is just another layer of deception? What if they're even more advanced than what Representative James has shown us?" "Then," James replied calmly, "rejecting them would be an even greater mistake." The debate continued for hours. Delegates presented arguments for and against Earth's membership. Some saw opportunity, others saw a threat. The division in the council grew deeper with each passing moment. Finally, Anderson called for the formal vote. "We have 3 options before us. Consider carefully. This decision will affect the galaxy for generations to come." The voting process began. Delegates registered their choices through their neural interfaces with the council's systems. The huge holographic display in the center of the chamber showed the results in real time. As the votes came in, a clear trend emerged. The younger species, those who had more recently joined the council, largely voted for acceptance. The older, more established species were divided between rejection and provisional membership. James watched the numbers change, his ancient face revealing nothing of his thoughts. The artificial suns began to dim, signaling the approach of the chamber's night cycle, but no one moved to leave. When the final vote was tallied, Anderson stood. The chamber grew still. By a margin of 3 votes, he announced, "The council has decided." Suddenly, A message flashed across all communication systems in the chamber. The delegates' universal translators processed it simultaneously. Greetings, honored council. We are the Earth delegation. We understand you are voting on our membership application. We are prepared to enter dialogue whenever you reach your decision. The message was simple, polite, and carried an unmistakable subtext. They were already watching, already waiting, already prepared for any outcome. Anderson looked at James, who nodded slowly. The council leader turned back to the assembled delegates, his silver skin reflecting the dim light of the chamber. The vote stands, he said firmly. We must now decide how to proceed with our response to Earth. Whatever we decide here will set the tone for our future relationship with humanity. The chamber remained silent as the delegates contemplated their next move, aware that somewhere the humans were waiting for their answer, probably already anticipating every possible response. 1 week after the historic vote, the Grand Council chamber looked vastly different. Human representatives stood on the central platform, their simple dark uniforms contrasting sharply with the elaborate dress of other species. The artificial suns shone at full brightness, illuminating every corner of the room. Council Leader Anderson addressed the assembled delegates and Earth representatives. By majority vote, the Galactic Council welcomes Earth as a full member, with all rights and responsibilities thereof. The human delegation's leader, Admiral Thomas, stepped forward. He was an older man with gray hair and calm eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. We are honored to accept membership, he said, then paused before adding, and we appreciate the Council's wisdom in reconsidering their initial assessment of our species. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably, remembering their earlier mockery. James, watching from his usual seat, noticed how the humans had positioned themselves, respectful but completely at ease, like they belonged there. As a gesture of good faith, Admiral Thomas continued, we would like to share some of our technological developments with the Council. He activated a holographic display of his own, and the chamber filled with gasps. The technology he revealed went far beyond what even James had discovered. The humans hadn't just developed faster-than-light travel, they had mastered it. Their energy production methods weren't just efficient, they were revolutionary. Their medical advances didn't just heal, they could virtually eliminate death from natural causes. As you can see, Thomas said calmly, we have much to offer. But more importantly, we have much to learn from you all as well. A delegate from the lower tier called out, why reveal all this now? Why not during the application process? Thomas smiled. Would you have believed us? Would you have trusted us? We needed to show you who we are, not just what we can do. James stood up. They wanted us to understand their character before we saw their capabilities, he explained to the chamber. They knew that trust had to come before technology. The council chamber buzzed with discussion as the humans continued their presentation. They showed plans for joint research projects, proposals for cultural exchange programs, and initiatives for solving galaxy-wide problems. We don't just want to join your council, Thomas explained. We want to help it grow, to evolve. Together, we can achieve things none of us could manage alone. Council Leader Anderson's silver skin shimmered with emotion. You were testing us as much as we were testing you, he realized aloud. Yes, Thomas admitted. We needed to know if the council could overcome its prejudices, if it could admit its mistakes, if it could embrace something new and different. You proved you could. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans hadn't just been applying for membership. They'd been evaluating the council's worthiness as a partner. James stepped down to the central platform. I'd watched humanity for centuries, he addressed the chamber, but even I didn't know everything they had achieved. They kept some secrets even from me. Because we respected you too much to put you in a difficult position, Thomas replied. You saw what you needed to see to help the council understand us. The artificial suns began to shift color, signaling the beginning of a new council day cycle. As their light changed, it felt like the dawn of a new era in galactic politics. So, Thomas said, looking around the chamber, Shall we begin our real work together? The delegates, who just a week ago had laughed at Earth's primitive technology, now sat in respectful silence. The humans had proven themselves not just advanced but wise, not just powerful but diplomatic, not just innovative but thoughtful. Council leader Anderson stepped forward to stand beside Thomas. "Today marks a new chapter in Council history," he announced. "Let it be recorded that we didn't just gain new members. We gained new teachers, new partners, and new friends." As the chamber erupted in applause, James watched the human delegation carefully. They had orchestrated this entire situation perfectly, turning potential rejection into unanimous acceptance, transforming mockery into respect. And somehow, he suspected, they were still keeping a few surprises in reserve, just in case. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly what humanity had intended all along.